the chat.
Hey, yo, White Sox fans, NWI Steve here, along with my guy, Bez Beyond the Pen. We are here to talk about, well, White Sox baseball from the week that was. Can't necessarily say it was exciting, considering we just saw a pretty epic Motor City meltdown. So before we get into all of that, please be sure to be going to ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. That's where you can get daily game recaps from my guy, Bez Beyond the Pen, and lots of other interesting musings on the state of this 2-7 Chicago White Sox baseball team here. Bez, how you doing, my man?
Oh, Steven, good to see you. I could be better. That should have been a win today, but what are you going to do? This is White Sox baseball in the year 2025.
It was pretty. It was a tough one to take right there. Obviously, anytime you go up to Detroit and get swept by the Motor City Kitties, it is not a good thing. And for everyone watching on the interwebs here, whether you are on YouTube, the X Machine, the Facebook, if that's still a thing, be sure to get in the comments section. We got our guy Sal in here already. Hey, yo, Sal, appreciate you hopping on here with us. So anybody else watching here, please feel free to come in, comment on the show here. Let's make this interactive. Before me and Bez kind of get into this thing here, we've got a very special guest for all of you here today. Somebody that is, around the streets of the White Sox, social media sphere, so to speak. A friend of mine, somebody that I've had the opportunity to watch a couple of ball games with at the ballpark. You may know him as the Korean Babe Ruth, former White Sox bullpen coach and bullpen catcher, Mansu Lee, joining us here on the show today. Mansu, how you doing, buddy?
Good. I'm doing good, Steve. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. That was the warmest, sweetest intro anyone could ever given me.
Well, thank you. Make sure that the check's in the mail, all right?
All right, BZ, good to see you.
Same. What's up, buddy?
Nice to talk without, trying to count to 10 with Tommy Johns, but here we are.
Indeed. So before we kind of get into what we saw this week and over the course of this 3-game series on this weekend here, Mansu, the first time joining us here on the show, why don't you kind of give us, your early impressions of, this first 9-game stretch for the White Sox, kind of what you've seen so far from an observation standpoint and just kind of where your psyche's at.
Yeah. So, coming into this year was the lowest level of excitement I've ever had and anticipation. And, I'm pretty good at, garnering up fake reasons to watch, fake reasons to get excited, that type of thing. Obviously game 1 was a win. Then they had that onslaught against the Twins, bagged another one. And for a minute, it felt like, okay, all right. So, maybe this isn't the 24 White Sox. Maybe this team's a little different. They can eke out some wins. The vibes are a little better. Maybe got a bunch of grinders out there. Obviously try not to nitpick lineups this early on. Obviously don't like Amaya in there every day. He's in there for defense, obviously. We'll get into that later. So obviously trying not to nitpick that and look at what's in Charlotte and say, oh, these are moves that should have been made already 9-10 games in. That being said, the series against Detroit brought me back to last year, especially today. common theme I felt last year, and maybe this is just confirmation bias, but the days where they brought some offense, they would score early, and then it would constantly be, White Sox had one hit since the third inning, or, since they put up the crooked number in the second, they've hit 3 balls out of the infield. So, today we kind of saw that again, and then it becomes a game of, all right, well, if the offense is dead, we now have to count on the bullpen. Obviously, this year the bullpen's a little different in years past, where there's not, heavy dollar capital invested. So you never know what you're going to get. Today really pissed me off for the sole reason that it's just like throw strikes, right? So for me, it's like you got the guys like Amaya out there who are there for defense. So let them play defense because, they're really not going to bring anything on the offensive side. Looking back at the relievers today, I think they faced 14 batters, 9 of them first pitch ball. So it's very hard with an anemic offense to be falling behind every hitter that late in the game. And, it caught up to them in the 9th. So, a little bit of optimism to start this past series has me feeling 24.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summation of things. Like you today in this loss, and we're going to kind of delve into that a little bit deeper here later on. It did certainly bring back some 2024 vibes for a lot of the reasons that you talked about, with the offense disappearing after putting a few runs across the board there. And then the bullpen in particular, the struggles there were very problematic. This Detroit series overall was pretty ugly. You had 2 games that really weren't particularly competitive, despite the 3 runs that the Sox scored in the 9th inning of the afternoon game on Friday. But overall, just not a particularly compelling series from this team overall. And, Bez, one of the things that, you, me, and Anthony were kind of talking about in the text chat was that, the vibes felt a little bit different. You kind of had a little bit of a sense of like, hey, maybe this, like Mansu was saying, maybe this team is different this year. Maybe this isn't 24. These guys aren't just rolling over and dying. And then that second out in the 6th inning happened on Tuesday, and everything has just gone off the rails since then.
Pretty much, yeah. There was some consternation online there about pulling Shane Smith at that point, even though he had 2 walks and put some runners on. I'm on the fence about that one. More so, my problem with that was going to the bullpen a little too late and getting a reliever up and going. I tweet this all the time, probably too much, about going through the order for the 3rd time and being careful about that. And at the time, I thought it was a good move because it was the heart of the order for the 3rd time. But Murphy came in late. I don't know that he was warm. He started warming up in that at bat prior to coming in, and he couldn't throw a strike. But also, he couldn't throw a strike today either. So maybe that had nothing to do with it. But nothing has gone well since then. Like you said, the vibes seem different. There are some things that I'm seeing that I do still like even today. So, we're only 9 games in, but I do like the at-bats. I'm seeing a little more patience, better swing decisions. The results haven't really come yet, except for those 2 games where they just went crazy. But I am liking what I'm seeing there. And just seems like there's just a better, they're playing a little more cohesive baseball. But yeah, that was a tough one today. I'm not sure there was a move there that could have been made to make a better outcome when you are constantly, like Mansu said, you see 2024 vibes when the bullpen comes in and coughs it up. But also when your offense is anemic, you're putting a lot of pressure on those guys to hold 1-run, 2-run leads over 3, sometimes 4 innings. So it's not a recipe for winning baseball.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of great points there, Bez, and it is fascinating because it does feel at the superficial level like the at-bats have been better over the course of this season through the first 8 games. And it kind of got me thinking, and I was doing a little bit of research on Baseball Savant during the first or second inning of this game, looking to see about how many pitches per plate appearance this team is seeing, because it just feels like it's been more. so far in the early going here. Feels like we've had several innings where they go out there and they force that starting pitcher, particularly in the first inning, to throw 20, 25 pitches. And so it got me thinking a little bit. If you had to guess, so the 2024 White Sox for 162 games averaged 3.83 pitches per plate appearance. Between the two of you, if you had to guess, what would you say that the number is so far here in the year of our Lord 2025?
Well, the way you set that up, I'm guessing that it's about the same.
It is exactly the same.
Oh, geez.
So it's kind of crazy to think about that because, again, visually, you look at things and, like I said, I myself was like, okay, it seems as though they're going out there having a better plate approach. Maybe this is the Ryan Fuller effect. And then you see that the numbers are the exact same as what they were a year ago. Now, the hope is that we saw one of the offensive pieces that was added over the winner, Mike Tauchman. So let's talk about some plate discipline here, and bringing him back up from Charlotte today after his little bit of a delay to the start of the season with his hamstring issue. Travis Jankowski was designated for assignment. So, guys, what are your thoughts now on being able to inject Mike Tauchman at the top of this lineup?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely it's a good spot for him, right? He's going to see a lot of pitches. I believe his first 3 at-bats today, he ran them all full. And I think after that, Robert did a pretty good job of running them full. So I think maybe him setting the tone at the top, maybe this is,
he said the thing.
Hopeful wishing on my part, but, with a little bit of patience, not going in there, taking the first pitch, grounding out, that type of thing. And, that being said, I think Vargas was doing okay job at seeing pitches at the top of the lineup. I think where they differentiate is we've yet to see Vargas really hit at the major league level, right? Where Tauchman can. So I think, when you're looking strictly Vargas to Tauchman, I'm not like going crazy, like, yes, we have this lead up, blah, 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 because Vargas was doing a decent enough job seeing pitches, but it does elevate the fact that he can hit, he has shown pop, he can field decently. And, until we can bring some of that spring training Vargas out of him, it's just better for him to be further down the lineup if he's going to be hitting 160.
Yeah, I mean, there are some automatic outs in that lineup right now. I mean, Vargas is one of them. Amaya is obviously one of them. And then, unfortunately, it pains me to say this, Luis Robert Jr. is an automatic out right now. I don't know what's going on there, if he's nursing an injury or if it's between the ears, but it's bad. And some people have brought up online that, his April splits throughout his career have been pretty bad. And, we hear this a lot with Jose Abreu, and when the weather heats up, so does he. And there's some numbers that back that up. But even for his historical splits, these are like way, way worse than that. And then he had that really bad throw from the outfield today. I don't know what the heck that was. He seemed like he threw that right into the ground. So yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of drags down the overall total of pitches seen per plate appearance when you've got 3 guys that are just, you can just throw fastballs right by them.
Well, the interesting thing about Robert, though, right now is he's actually got about an 11% walk rate to start the year, which is, very atypical for him. I think even Steven Stone had commented on that during the course of the broadcast. So, he did have 1 walk here today. So he is seemingly taking pitches a little bit more and working counts a little bit deeper, but he's not impacting the baseball. And this is, one of the main issues I had with Yoan Moncada during his time with the team was that, he would get himself seemingly into good counts, but I've always been a believer that you get yourself into those hitters counts 2-0, 3-1 so that you can impact the baseball. And right now, Robert is not doing that. So hopefully at some point, starting on Tuesday when they go to the Mistake by the Lake and take on the Cleveland Guardians, he'll get himself into those beneficial hitting counts and start to really put quality swings on the baseball here and start to do some damage here, because that's really what this team needs him to do right now, because there's just not a lot of thump in this lineup. He's one guy that can consistently provide it, barring health and, a number of other factors with him.
He doesn't have a homer yet.
No, he doesn't.
Who's the team leader right now? Is it Benintendi?
That would be Noodle Boy.
Oh boy.
And Nick Maton with 2.
And yeah, Nick Maton with 2 of them as well, which, Noodle Boy did leave the game here in the 4th inning today with, I believe it was, they said an abductor strain. So Nick Maton came in for him. So that's definitely something that we're going to have to keep our eyes on here. Going to another cold weather city in the Midwest for a 3-game set, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we got to kind of wait and see now. Will Andrew Benintendi be available and in the lineup on Tuesday when that series kicks off, which we're going to preview later on in the show here. So, guys, overall, just a really discouraging week of baseball. You go 1-5 out there. You had an opportunity to get 2 more wins. You could have very easily been 3-3 this week. One of the biggest issues that I saw this week here, and we'll kind of turn it around the horn, is the starting pitching, once Shane Smith left the game in the 6th inning on Tuesday, has really struggled. Outside, Martin Perez had a solid outing here today, not as strong as his performance on Monday against the Minnesota Twins, the team's lone win this past week. But a big concern that I have, and this is something that I have talked about and I wrote about quite a bit over the course of the offseason, was this team's pitching, and the starters in particular needing to find ways to miss bats. And coming into today, the team ranked 28 in baseball in, granted, only 8 games with 6.04 Ks per 9. And that number is greatly inflated by the 9 strikeouts that Martin Perez had in his start on Monday against the Minnesota Twins. So between Jonathan Cannon, Sean Burke, Davis Martin, they're really struggling to get swings and misses right now. And we saw in this Detroit series in particular, and then even the final game of the Minnesota series, it really came back to haunt this team. So this is something that has to improve here relatively quickly. And it really needs to start on Tuesday with Jonathan Cannon.
Yeah, I don't know how they improve that in the short term, because I didn't see much of that last year from Cannon, and we haven't seen it yet so far this year. None of these guys have elite velocity. None of them can, light up the radar gun at 98, 99. Pitching to contact in the year of our Lord 2025 is a recipe for disaster. So teams that can hit are going to feast on that, and teams especially that don't chase pitches out of the strike zone are going to get on base a lot and extend innings. And you saw that happen here this afternoon.
Matsu, what are you seeing on the pitching front?
Yeah, I think Bez said it well. Just to piggyback off his thoughts. They're not missing bats, and they're not throwing enough strikes. Batters are able to spit on the pitches they don't want, and they can sit on the pitches they do want. And when you're not missing bats, and obviously not everyone's using a torpedo, but you're gonna find barrels eventually. And that the first turn through the lineup was. Right through the rotation was fun, right? Because nobody gave up any runs, blah, blah, blah. A lot of us, look a little deeper, look at, some of the contact numbers, look at this and that. It's like, okay, well, not sustainable, obviously. And that came to fruition this week. Came to fruition way sooner than we would have wanted. But yeah, you got to get the big strikeout numbers. Major league pitchers, starters, 5-6 innings, you get 8, 9, 10 Ks to miss those bats. That's, you just can't, and especially with, the defense has been shaky. Baldwin's been a little bit of a mess out there and that type of thing. So you have a young, inexperienced, obviously not great baseball team. You give them enough chances to mess up, and they're going to mess up. So need a little bit more help from the starters. Also, if you're finding yourself 80 pitches, 85 pitches, struggling to get through the third, struggling to get through the fourth, that then piggybacks into taxing a bullpen that's not strong as is. It puts you in a position where you can't properly use and leverage what you do have in the way you want. And you're already kind of scrambling to piece game plans together at this point. And so, I completely agree with Bez. We need more innings, and we need to try and get some sort of bullpen plan down where we can see who's made for the leverage situations, but if we have to throw people in down 7-1 in the 5th inning and it's just an eating an inning situation, it's like we don't really get to see what their cojones are and what they really bring in a situation like you might find today where, you're up against the wall and you don't throw strikes.
No, great points there, Mansu. I think my biggest pet peeve, and I talk about this, ad nauseum here, obviously, is not going out there, not throwing strikes, not pitching with intent. And we see that pretty regularly over the course of this past week here. And, you look at the 2 blowups that Penn Murphy had out there. Jordan Leisure, again, just not pitching with aggressiveness, in my opinion, coming into the game in an opportunity when, you've got a chance to kind of stake your claim to say, hey, I want to be a late inning, high leverage guy, give me the opportunity here. Let me prove that I can be the closer of the future that he was labeled as when this team raided the Dodgers in that trade back in June of 2023 that sent Lance Lynn out to Hollywood here, which, not looking like this steal that a lot of people online originally thought it was, but, that's a whole different discussion anyway on that front. It is going to be a little bit of a trial and error with this team and the bullpen in particular over the course of this season here. So I will continue to be intrigued as to what they're going to do and how Brian Bannister, Ethan Katz, what kind of adjustments and what kind of tweaks to game plans that they are ultimately going to make to try to get the most that they can out of this group that they have here. And at what point are we going to start to see some shuffling going on? That's the one thing I would say about Chris Getz during his time as general manager in comparison to his predecessors, Rick Hahn and Ken Williams. He has seemingly been very quick to make changes and to churn and burn on the roster. We saw one of the first moves that he made, Dominic Fletcher, a guy that couldn't hit last year. He was DFA'd before the season started here, ultimately cleared waivers and is back in Charlotte. So he's shown a willingness to be quick with the hook on some of these guys. So kind of monitoring and seeing what he's going to do from a bullpen construction here over the course of the next few weeks and months is going to be fascinating to keep an eye on. So moving on here, we're 9 games into the Will Venable era. I know I was someone that was very positive on the hire of Venable when it was made, just given his background, his pedigree, and the different roles that he has had throughout his time since he hung up his spikes playing. And, it seemed like overall there was a very positive reaction to him being hired as the manager of this baseball team. With all of that being said, it is only fair to call out things that we see during the course of games here and some questionable decisions. Bez, you brought up one earlier here, the game on Tuesday night, the decision to pull Shane Smith with 2 outs in the top of the 6th inning after issuing the back-to-back walks. I know from my perspective, I thought that decision was one that could have gone either way. I could definitely see a justification for keeping Smith in that particular spot there, given that he did have a low pitch count. But I personally thought it was the right decision to make, given the fact that he had issued 2 consecutive walks and you ultimately brought the tying run up to the plate for a guy in his first major league start that never even threw more than 4 innings over a Cactus League performance there. So I didn't have an issue with that particular decision right there. What I did have an issue with today, 4th inning, you get runners on 1st and 2nd and nobody out, and you have Brooks Baldwin at the plate. Guy that has actually been swinging the bat pretty well and having some quality at bats. And Will Venable decides to give up an out and have Brooks Baldwin bunt with Jacob Amaya on deck. Bez, tell me that this wasn't completely fucking insane.
It is insane is one way to say it. If I'm being nice, it's very conservative to give up an out in the 4th inning in that situation with Jacob Amaya on deck, who we know is basically an automatic out, although he did somehow hit the ball into the outfield far enough for the runner to score. I wasn't a fan of that move whatsoever. So I don't know. I haven't seen a post game yet. I don't know if he's been asked about that to hear what his thought process was. But I'm from the Earl Weaver school of thought when it comes to managing. Is your offense's biggest asset is 27 outs, and you don't give one up just to move up 90 feet. So not a fan there. Hopefully, I don't know. Like, I want to say it's a learning experience. This is a rookie manager, but also you mentioned the pedigree that he was under Bruce Bochy and Joe Madden briefly. So if he's had that experience, I don't know. I guess we're still learning his style of managing. But if this is it, I'm not looking forward to it.
Matsu, what were your thoughts on that bump right there?
I mean, you guys said it. I mean, in any scenario, I think it's egregious. I think doing it in front of Amaya is crazy. And I think when you look at, as long as, I mean, again, this could be confirmation bias. As long as I can remember watching this team, you got a runner on third, you got less than 2 outs. It's like minus money that they're not going to score at that point. So it's just like putting yourself in a position where you've just been historically dog water, and you have a hitter who you already tried to DFA once in spring and brought back. And it's just like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not losing any sleep over it. Like you said, it's one decision, not a huge deal. Outside of that, it's just, still just trying to feel him out. You mentioned earlier getting Murphy out of the pen, and maybe he wasn't fully ready. And again, I don't know if this was an issue with Schriffen not seeing the bullpen or what, but, Ellard's up there at the end of the game. He says, this is Ellard's game. Nobody's up in the pen. Well, that was the last batter Ellard faced. He said, well, hold up. Now there's some action. And then Will comes out, and I thought he was going to just, talk to Ellard, calm him down, let Leisure get some throws in. But no, they went right to Leisure. So that is something that's interesting to me, because seemingly that's twice. And I don't know if those guys were fully warm or not. And again, that could have been a miscommunication with the broadcast and what was happening on the field. But that is the one thing
that never happens with John Schriffen, right?
Yeah, everyone's favorite, especially following up Benetti. Everybody loves what happened there. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have much, obviously, to go off of 8 games. The bunt sucked, very Grifol-esque. Don't want to see it anymore, is what it is. And then the bullpen thing is interesting and worth watching. Seems to be heavy on handedness, but we'll see as we go.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty even keel and pretty measured approach to take to it. Like we said, I mean, we're talking about a 9-game sample size here for a guy that has never been in the manager's chair before. So there have been a number of different things that I have liked about him so far to this point. I think he's been pretty aggressive from an offensive standpoint when he's had the opportunity to put guys in motion, trying to get guys to take that extra 90 feet. And, some of the lineup construction thought processes, I think, have been pretty sound for the most part here. So it's going to be interesting to continue to monitor the bullpen situation here. We have 2 instances where we're kind of scratching our heads a little bit, saying, hey, we're guys ready to come into games from a relief pitching standpoint. So, hopefully that's not an issue that is persisting well into the season here as Will Venable gets more managerial experience under him. And then obviously the bunting aspect here, that's something that I'm not a fan of. Bez, you made a great point there. I very much am a Earl Weaver disciple, that you win with pitching, defense, and 3-run homers. So giving up those 27 outs, that is precious currency, as you said there. So hopefully that's something we don't see much more of going forward here. So overall, guys, bad weekend in Detroit to cap off a really bad week. Like I said, 1-5. They now sit 2-7 on the season here. I don't know that anybody on this show here, or anybody even watching at this point, could really say they're that surprised to be 2-7 right now, even though realistically they could be about 4-5. But it is still frustrating, especially a game like today that you seemingly had won and then you found a way to give it away. And it just kind of gives you that PTSD to everything that we went through a year ago. So hopefully they can snap out of it when they get on the charter and head down to disgusting Cleveland, Ohio after this and flush it, as Mr. Clean used to say here. So, and get back on track behind Shane Smith this coming Tuesday. But before we preview that series here, we got to talk kind of the big elephant in the room. So our buddy, Bob Nightingale, in his weekly column today, my guy, everyone knows I'm a big, long time Bob Nightingale guy, #confirmed, put a little nugget in there stating that Jerry Reinsdorf has no intentions of selling any ownership stake in the White Sox, despite Justin Ishbia's continued overtures and despite the recent rumors and speculation that Ishbia has increased his minority ownership stake in this. And essentially, Bob is throwing cold water on the reports that maybe, just maybe, the end might be near. So it looks as though for the foreseeable future, we are stuck with Satan reincarnate operating our baseball team here. So, fellas, what are your thoughts on this report?
Mansu?
Yeah, I mean, I believe it. I think as long as he's healthy and kicking and, honestly, the few appearances he makes, it looks like he might actually be getting healthier as time goes on, which is alarming to say the least. Goes with my theory that if you purchase a Chicago sports team, you get the fountain of youth with it, although we just lost Mama Bear. That being said, I do not believe that there's no fire where there's smoke here. I think that the Ishbias want a baseball team. I think they want the White Sox. I think that's obvious. And I think they were ready to and this is all just thought process. I have no idea, but I think they were ready to move on from that. So, Reinsdorf has no interest. He's stuck, whatever. We don't need, are they going to keep it in the family? Whatever. And he seemingly pivoted to the Twins, seemingly was in the final stages ready to close. And then just like that, he's giving up being a full-time owner of a baseball team, his dream that he can fulfill now, right? He's got the cap. He's rich as all hell. He can buy that team now. And he had the opportunity, a team for sale. And to boot, it's in the Midwest. So sure, it's not Chicago. It's close enough to where he's building his compound here. So while I do believe that while Jerry's alive, healthy, and able, he has no intention to sell the team. But I do believe that there's a succession plan in place.
And that's something that I have kind of come back to when these reports initially broke, 6 weeks ago or so. It just doesn't make sense on a lot of different levels. And I know I'm kind of regurgitating my feelings on this from when we see Bez. I mean, what did we do? A full half hour on this at one point? I think at the end of the day, we know that Jerry likes to keep things close to the vest. He doesn't really tip his hand on what he's planning to do with this baseball team. So, the idea of him coming out and saying, oh, well, we've put a succession plan in place for Justin Ishbia to get this team in 5 to 7 years. He's not going to come out and do that. He's going to really just kind of say, oh, well, yeah, it's just the status quo right now. But as Mansu said, why would Justin Ishbia pull out of the Twins when he was seemingly approaching the finish line to be able to do this? And the Pohlad family had originally had an opening day deadline to get this transaction done and closed. And Justin Ishbia pulling his offer from the table seemingly threw a huge monkey wrench into that entire process. So again, it kind of begs the question, why would Justin Ishbia do this, not knowing that there's some plan in place for him to eventually have control of the White Sox, Bez?
We don't have all the information is the only answer. I know that's super obvious, but there's, I would assume that in business dealings like this is an ultra rich guy who's had a lot of success in his field, who knows a good deal when he sees it. So there's got to be something in that offer that made it better and more appealing, on top of the fact that his company is here and he's building a massive Andrew Benintendi contract worth compound up there in Winnetka. So there's got to be something there. There's got to be, maybe he thought, I don't know. Maybe he thought easing into an ownership situation and kind of learning the ropes and the way that Major League Baseball works and how the other owners work could be a better option on top of all the other things that I said. I'm totally speculating and just spitballing here. But there's something in that deal. Reinsdorf sweetened the pot somehow.
Yeah, the level of uncertainty that exists behind this whole situation is the thing that's probably the most frustrating for us as a fan base. And I said initially when that Friday deadline a couple of weeks ago passed and there was nothing announced online, I even said that I wasn't surprised by that fact, just knowing that a deal of this magnitude and with this many dollars involved in it, there's going to be a lot of legal maneuvering going on. There's going to be a very lengthy legal review process. You have to make sure that, all your T's are crossed and lowercase j's are dotted on a transaction of that size. So we are still waiting to kind of see and get that announcement that Justin Ishbia has increased that ownership stake in it, because nothing has been formally announced on it. I know there's been some rumor and innuendo on the interwebs surrounding that, but nothing concrete. So we're all just really left in limbo here, waiting for some sort of positive news that a savior of some sort is coming to help eventually guide this franchise out of the dark ages that we find ourselves in right now, fellas. So we're obviously going to continue to monitor the situation. And, Mansu, if you have to find your way up to Winnetka to get into the compound here and get some in-person reporting, hey, we're all about it, my friend here. We're all about boots on the ground here at Sox on Tap.
Yeah, once he gets the roof on that thing, and honestly, by the looks of it, I might be able to sneak in there, stay a week before anyone even notices. So I'll keep you posted.
Nice.
Outstanding. All right, guys. So we're going to close the book on this past week. We're looking forward to the week ahead. Got an off day tomorrow, so you got to stew on this 5-game losing streak right now before you go to the Mistake by the Lake in Northeast Ohio on the shores of Lake Erie. Steve Stone's hometown. The Sox will be the opponent for the Cleveland Guardians home opener. So it'll be opening day number 3 for our boys. Guardians finishing up a 10-game West Coast road trip to start the year as they're taking on the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim of Orange County of California of the Pacific time zone right now. So hopefully that game, goes 12, 13, 14 innings. And they get a late flight back, and hopefully they burn through as much of their bullpen as possible. So, going to be an interesting series coming up here. Everybody knows I hate them with every fiber of my being, and I would love nothing more than to see the Sox just pissing their Cheerios for the home opener. So, Tuesday it's going to be a 3:10 start. Shane Smith going to get his second big league start, going up against Ben Lively for the Guardians. Wednesday will be a 5:10. Those infamous 5:10 starts for the Cleveland Guardians there. It'll be Sean Burke hoping to rebound off of that disastrous outing against the Minnesota Twins this past Wednesday against Logan Allen. And then it'll be another matinee on Thursday, a 12:10 start, Jonathan Cannon against Gavin Williams. So, the Cleveland Guardians, pretty solid pitching staff, a team that has given the Sox fits for much of the last decade at least. Jose Ramirez had a 3-homer night over the weekend here against the Angels, and he really is nothing but a gigantic problem for the Sox since he came into his own probably 2014 or 2015. So we're going on about a decade worth of destruction here at the hands of him. And, obviously you get Carlos Santana back in that mix right there. So another guy that has given this team fits. Guys, what are your thoughts and what are you looking to see here to kick off this 3-game set? Mansu, what do you got?
I'm expecting the worst, hoping for the best. To your point, it just feels like anytime you deal with Cleveland, especially in Cleveland, it's just a torture chamber. That being said, out of all the teams in the AL Central last year, they won the most against Cleveland. So I guess you never really know. That being said, given the way our offense is and given the pitching factory that Cleveland is, I'm a little bit worried about the anemia continuing. Looking at Cleveland's lineup, I mean, I don't know that there's a world where 1-2 of Kwan and Ramirez don't make us rip our hair out over the next 3 days. I mean, they just absolutely own us. Own might even be an understatement. Looking at the rest of their lineup, obviously, batting wise, it's never really been a juggernaut. They haven't really needed to because of all that pitching. I think this week against the White Sox, you probably only need 4 or 5 runs a game, and that should be probably pretty safe. And that makes me nervous if the Sox starters are not going to throw strikes and go deep into the game. I'm anticipating an opening day Noel bomb that's approaches 500. And I expect that to be a beatdown opening day, similar to Detroit. You got to love it. And then at this point, try and snag one. I'm just hoping to snag one on the road in Cleveland, go from there. I think a big thing this year is trying to stop these skids before they get to these ridiculous numbers, right? Before they hit the 8s, the 10s, the 12s, the numbers that don't even seem possible that we hit last year. So just let's get out of Cleveland with one.
I agree. Don't get swept is my motto for this year. Obviously, it happened today. It's going to happen again. But hopefully just snag one in the series. I don't know which one. Logan Allen, a lefty. I haven't looked it up, but I feel like we've hit him well in the past. Maybe this is the series where Robert gets out of his funk. But just win one. And come out of there without a sweep. And like you said, don't let the losing streaks blow up to 10 double-digit losses. Keep it. I can't believe we're even saying it. Keep it reasonable. Keep it to 6 games or 5 or whatever it is. But you bring up a good point about Cleveland's offense being not great themselves besides a couple of guys. So that could maybe work into our favor if you don't pitch to those guys. And if you can somehow get them out, the rest of the lineup gives you a little relief there. So I expect some low scoring games, and I feel like we'll pull one out. We were 5-8 against them last year. So we'll get one.
I agree as the eternal optimist on this show here. I think they are going to find a way to steal one of these games out there. And like I said, I would love it if it was nothing more than on Tuesday and just spoiling the home opener. There's all kinds of hope and anticipation for every team at their home opener. I think particularly for this Guardians team that made it to the ALCS a year ago. And few things in this world bring me as much joy as knowing Cleveland Guardians fans are suffering. So let's find a way to make that happen this coming Tuesday. Shane Smith, go out there, have another solid outing, have that kick change working, throw it a little bit more than you did in that initial start on this past Tuesday against the Minnesota Twins. So really feature that and go out there and find a way to get your first big league W. So I would really like to see that happen. So, guys, that's kind of all I had for us here. Let's throw it around the horn one more time. Final thoughts. Mansu joining us here today. Appreciate it once again. Give us your final thoughts.
Yeah, no, again, thanks for having me. Really appreciate shooting it with you guys. Obviously love all the content you put out. Bez, a great follow on Twitter. Steve, I don't know, too scared of Twitter now, whatever it may be. But I appreciate you guys having me on. My thoughts are it's going to be really hard to break my spirit this year based off of the low expectations I had coming in. Today was a disappointment because it gave me 24 vibes. I have faith that this clubhouse will not crater itself in the way that it did last year. I think that I'm hoping that these guys still enjoy coming to the ballpark, even amidst some of these lows. And, just going to try and find the good through the mess and, hope the fountain of youth stops flowing for Jerry. That's all I got.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hopefully, the things don't crater like it did last year. I'm going to keep an eye on obviously the bullpen and some things as far as the roster goes and how soon Getz is going to cut bait on these people. You've got Jacob Amaya here, who's a placeholder for, I don't know, Chase Mydroth. When is Colson Montgomery going to be ready, and who do they move on from?
I don't even. I think we're at the point where we can just. I'm not just I'm not gonna pile on you here, but I honestly I don't want to hear about Colson Montgomery right now. I mean, we were texting about this, and at the point when he was 1 for 21 with 15 strikeouts, I think we need to just, as a fan base, the Colson Montgomery talk just needs to stop right now. I know you're very much in that camp, Bez, but I don't know how anybody can look at what is happening here to his second go around in AAA Charlotte and can feel positive about what we're seeing.
You can't, and it's just like let's say if it's Memorial Day and he's hitting 190, then what? Like, do you just keep him in AAA the rest of the season? Because then he's done. Like it's over at that point. It's #over. But going back to what I was saying, the bullpen is another thing. Let's shuffle some pieces around. And then the other thing is they're pretty pot committed with Miguel Vargas because they gave up a lot to get him. But he is not showing me much. So how long are they going to stay with that experiment before turning to, I don't know, Brian Ramos or just trying someone else at third base? So that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, biggest thing for me is kind of piggybacking off of something Mansu said there earlier was how Will Venable is going to keep this clubhouse together and kind of keep them as a cohesive unit to try to stop these losing streaks. We're at 5 right now. Given recent history and 2024 aside, despite the fact that they actually somehow won 5 games against Cleveland, that has been a house of horrors here. So preventing this from really snowballing and getting to 8 games, then you got Baltimore, and that's a very good offensive team. You got them waiting for you when you come home next Friday. So this is the type of thing and the type of point in the schedule here where it could snowball quickly. And we saw that a year ago when they started 3-22. So can Will Venable find a way, push the right buttons to put a stop to this so that things don't get out of hand right away here in his first month as a major league manager? So that's something that I'm going to be watching for very closely. And like I said, the other thing is just find a way to win one, preferably on Tuesday, and piss in the Cheerios of every Cleveland Guardians fan. That's what I want to see. So that's going to wrap it up here for another Sunday Funday edition of the Sox on Tap postgame show. Thanks everyone for joining us here today. Thanks again to our special guest Mansu Lee for hopping on with us. And as a reminder, please be sure to go to ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. You can get daily White Sox recaps from our guy Bez Beyond the Pen. Every once in a while, I'll throw in some writings when I'm not on the road in the likes of lovely Appleton, Wisconsin, or some other bumfuck place in the Midwest that my work travels are taking me to. So you got it all right there for you. So that's all we've got for you guys here today. So signing off right now, guys.
White Sox for life.
White Sox for life.